everyone. This is Liz Bramlett coming to you from our training center. And today we're going to spend a few minutes learning how and why we average the applicable fraction for buildings for the first year of the credit period for a tax credit building. What we want to do is we want to understand that the first year of the credit period is the critical year for every tax credit building. What you do in year one of the credit period, so the value of the credit for year one and the potential value of the credits for the entire credit period. And part of that is based on this rule we have to implement during year one called the first year averaging convention. During year one, first of all, you have a goal, an ultimate for how much of a building you want to produce a tax credit. Say if you're trying to be 100% tax credit building, then your goal is to get to a 100% applicable fraction. Certainly you want to get there, if not before, you want to get there at least by the end of the first year of the credit period. And that's because the building produces a tax credit for the first year of its credit period based on the applicable fraction you reach by the end of the year, usually 12/31. In addition to that, during the first year of the credit period, you have to calculate a building's applicable fraction on a monthly basis. So after you place a building into service, you have to start calculating its applicable fraction at the end of each month. That's because an owner has to split the tax credit a building produces for year one between their tax return for year one and tax return for year 11. And okay, how do we calculate that split? We'll calculate that split. We calculate how we're going to split the first year's tax credit between the year 1 and the year 11 tax return by utilizing the average applicable fraction for that year. The portion of the first year's tax credit, the owner gets to, on their first year's return, is calculated using that average applicable fraction for the months in year one. What portion of the first year's credit the owner is unable to take on their first year's return is what they leave and take on their year 11 tax return. And sometimes you'll hear to year 11 referred to as on the back end. That's the portion of the first year's credit they had to wait and take at the end of the credit period in year 11. So we sample here. We have a 50-unit, 100% tax credit building. It was placed in service July 15, 2014. So you need to calculate the monthly applicable fraction for 2014. That applicable fraction is going to be 0% for the months January through July. And you might be asking yourself, why is the applicable fraction automatically 0% for July when we placed in service during July? We may get a bunch of leasing done by the end of July. It is 0% for July because a unit has to be in service a full calendar month before it begin to produce a tax credit. So placed in service any day after July 1st, you cannot start really producing credits until August. Our applicable fraction is 0% for January through July. Then get some leasing done, and during August, we build our applicable fraction up to 20%. Do some more leasing by the end of September. We get building 40% occupied by tax credit qualified residents. Double leasing again in October. By the October, 80% of the building is occupied by residents we've qualified for the tax credit program. End of November, we hit our goal of 100%. By the end of November, all of the units in this building are occupied by tax credit qualified residents. We remain at that goal as of December 31st. So, news, we hit our goal of being a 100% tax credit building by the end of the first year of the credit period. And it's always good. That way you don't have to worry about the impact of the 2/3 rule. You don't have to leave any of your credits on the table. You do have to average the applicable fraction for this year. So we take 20% plus 40% plus 80% plus 100% plus 100%. And when we do the create average, yes, we have to divide by 12 months, even though they haven't been in service for the 12 months. So what they did when they designed this program, they created an incentive, first of all, to get a building into service as quickly as possible, and secondly, to get the units occupied by people who need the housing as early in the year as possible. Because the quicker you do your lease up, the bigger the credit the investor gets to take on their first-year tax return. The slower you lease up your building during year one, the bigger the credit the investor has to wait and take in year 11. Make a credit stream less valuable to the investor, meaning they will contribute a little less equity to your project. So in a situation, we come up with average applicable fraction for year one of the credit period of 28.33%. An annual tax credit that this building produces will be $450,000. So figure out for year one, how much of that do the investors actually get to take on their year one tax return, and how much do they have to wait and take in year 11? So $450,000 multiplies our average applicable fraction for the year, and we see on a year one tax return, investor can take a credit of $27,485. We subtract that from the total credit for the year of $450,000, and we see we're going to have to leave a little over $300,000 to take as a credit on their 11 tax return. Now, if the owner begins the credit period the year they place in service, like we've discussed, the credit produced for year one will need to be split between year one and their year 11 tax returns based on the average applicable fraction for that year. But if it begins the credit period the year after place in service, and if all the tax credit units are occupied by qualified residents, January 31st of the year following the placed in service date, the investors will be able to take their entire first year's tax credit on what will be year one of the credit period. So back to our building example, we said this building will produce an annual credit of $450,000, and average applicable fraction for year one was 28.33%. We said if the owner goes ahead, starts the credit period the year they place into service, the investors will get to take $127,485 credit on their year one tax return, have to leave a little over $300,000 as a credit to take on their year 11 tax return. But if, on the other hand, the begins the credit period the year after they place into service, then the investor will be able to take their entire $450,000 credit on year one tax return, because they will begin year one with an applicable fraction of 100%. In terms of the partnership agreement and the specific situation at the project, the developer will run the math and decide, based on this situation, does it make sense to go ahead and start the credit period the year they placed in service, or to begin credit period the following year. Please let me know if there are any questions I can answer for you. You can find me through my website at lizbramlettconsulting.com. You have my phone number and email address, and you can follow me on Twitter, and please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I look forward to speaking with you in the future. Bye-bye.